Hello and welcome back. I'm Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects, aka the Rig Doctor. Today we're talking about, do you actually need a MIDI programmable switcher or a true bypass looper in order to get the same great tone of your guitar cable plugged directly into your amplifier? Let's check it out. Before we get into this comparison and some of the theory behind this, let's first start with what it means to say you have a programmable MIDI switcher. Well, I got one right here, and it is from Boss. It's the Boss ES5, and I've actually built a rig very recently for my buddy Scott using this ES5, and this is an example of a programmable MIDI switcher. So not only does it offer true bypass loops for 5 devices, it also has a MIDI out and a MIDI in. And you can send MIDI controller messages or PC messages to MIDI devices to control them to change presets, but you can also wire in 5 devices of your choosing and bring multiple devices on with one foot switch, or use it as a glorified true bypass looper where each foot switch represents one of the pedals on the pedal board. Because you're wiring in all of the effects into this particular device, it's taking your input jack from where the guitar plugs in, and it's bridging that all the way to the end to the output jack that's going back to your amp. So if you don't have any effects turned on, it's giving you the most direct signal path from the guitar back to the amplifier. But the question is, well, what if you're not going to use one of those? Are you still going to be able to get a sound that's close to that, that's close to the sound of the guitar plugged right into the amplifier? And I built another rig for myself recently where I think that we can really attempt to compare this. I got Scott's rig, which is using a MIDI programmable switcher, and then I got my pedal board where everything's in series. Every pedal runs into the next. There's a few buffered pedals on there, but I'm using the exact same buffers on my pedal board as I'm using on Scott's pedal board. So it should be a fairly fair fight, and we have about the same amount of pedals. I think I'm right around 10 pedals, as is Scott, just maybe a little under 10 pedals. And I think we'll be able to see if we're able to get fairly close, even without using a true bypass looper or any sort of MIDI programmable switcher, if we're able to get approximate tone to just plugging directly into the amplifier. So how am I going to do this? In this test today, I'm going to be using the Loop Master as essentially our true bypass looper. In one of the groupings of send and returns, I'm going to put my pedal board. In the one right next door to it, I'm going to put the one to Scott's pedal board that uses the MIDI programmable switcher, the Boss ES5, so that I can go back and forth between the two. I'm going to have a 10-foot cable coming in, and I'm going to have a 10-foot cable going out of the Loop Master. So those are going to remain constant, and I'm going to use a 5-foot cable on the input and output of each one of the pedal boards. So we have the same amount of capacitance going in, the same amount going out in terms of the cable length, so those match up, so that we can really tell when the pedal boards are completely in bypass, how much are they affecting the tone, and is there any appreciable difference between the MIDI programmable switcher versus the same amount of pedals roughly in series without any isolation, being able to bring them in and out of the signal path or completely bypass them using some sort of MIDI programmable switch or some sort of true bypass switch. So we're all set up here. What we have are our 2 pedal boards. We have my personal pedal board, which has all of our effects in series. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 effects in series on my pedal board. And then on Scott's rig, which is the one with the switcher where it's got everything in the programmable switcher or MIDI controlled by way of the switcher, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pedals on there. So this will be a good test. We got 10 feet from the guitar into our loop switcher today, which we're going to be using to just bring in and out each one of these pedal boards with everything in bypass. So I got one connected to loop 4 on my Loop Master. I have another pedal board connected to loop 10. The one that's on loop 4 is closest to Scott's board. That's going to Scott's. The one that's further to the left in loop 10 is mine. And I'm just going to play some stuff. We're totally dry going into a Fender Tweed Deluxe. There's no reverb. It's just straight through. I'm going to be using my LSL Huffcaster Super Strat to go into that. The reason why I'm doing it is because it does have a humbucker in the bridge so that we can hear it through both and just kind of get a sense of what it actually sounds like, and is there an appreciable difference or even any difference between the clean tone versus these pedal boards engaged, bringing the whole thing into the signal path. So I'm not only listening for the sound and whether there's any roll off, but I'm also trying to listen for any sort of dynamic changes or even changes in the feel, how much it pops, how much compression there is. If there's any change in that, I'm going to be kind of narrating this as I go so you can hear it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give us our clean reference. So this is just guitar going directly into my Fender Tweed Deluxe. Real simple, straight ahead, again, 10-foot cable in, 10-foot cable out, all the same stuff. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be bringing in Scott's pedal board. That's a true bypass MIDI programmable switcher. Everything in bypass. We're just hearing the pedal board with the input and output buffer, and I'm going to toggle back and forth between that and the clean tone so you really get a sense of how well it does versus the reference. Now I'm going to go back and forth a little faster, just kind of harping on the same chord. I'm really not hearing hardly any difference at all. Maybe there's some slight percussion difference between the two different sounds, but I think a lot of that has to do with just eliminating the capacitance, because when I'm using the direct version where I'm just going guitar, cable into amp, I don't have any signal conditioning at all. When I introduce the buffer, that's conditioning my signal, but I have to say almost negligible in terms of sound. There's a slight feeling difference, maybe like a 2% difference. Very, very close though. I mean, like really, really nitty gritty close. And certainly that could just, again, be a factor of I'm eliminating, again, 20 feet of cable in the direct sound versus on the one with the buffers, I have 10 feet of cable only before I'm hitting the buffers, and then that's kind of taking care of the rest. But let's see what happens when we go into my pedal board where everything's in line. I don't have any way to bypass the effects. They're all being seen in series. So let's try that. I don't know, man. I'm still not getting an appreciable difference between the sound of it bypassed, again, guitar directly into amplifier versus going through even my pedal board that has, as we said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pedals in series versus Scott has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pedals in series. It's almost indistinguishable even between the two of them. This is incredibly quiet. There's no additional noise fillers by way of the buffer. It is not changing the EQ or the overall tone of it at all. I could notice a slight feel and difference on the Boss ES5, just in the compression, the snap a little bit, but I'm really not getting that here on mine. It's really sounding like the same exact thing to me. I mean, there's really, really no difference here. I'm incredibly impressed. I did expect there to be some additional roll-off because obviously I can't control the buffering that's going on my particular pedal board. I do have buffers in the Klon style effect from Rocket, the Archer. I have a buffer in the Tube Screamer. Otherwise, everything else is set to true bypass. But man, does it sound incredibly close, equally with Scott's, even with the ES5, incredibly close. But I don't think if you're talking about from a tone perspective, using a programmable switcher or using a loop switcher to put all of your effects in true bypass, I don't think that that's going to substitute for high quality buffers. Input and output buffers, as I always advocate for, first and last in the chain. Making sure you have a low noise, high quality power supply. using high quality soldered cables. This stuff all adds up to success, and you can really hear it here. There is no appreciable difference between these two in terms of the tone with everything in bypass. That really is allowing the pedals to be the most effective that they can be, being able to let your amp be as effective as it can be, and making sure that you're getting as direct and pure a signal from the guitar to the amp. I think that this, if anything else, proved that you can do it, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, whether you want to go the true bypass, loop switcher, MIDI programmable direction, or whether you want to go old-fashioned, all in series. I think we proved that today. So that was determining whether there is any appreciable difference in tone versus using a true bypass looper or a MIDI programmable looper versus having your effects in series. I think what you saw here is that the difference that the buffers make is that it allows you to have some variability on the pedal board and still keeps the tone really consistent as long as everything's in bypass. I think the greater number of true bypass pedals that you have on your pedal board, presuming that you have a high quality input and output buffer like we have on our systems, the closer you'll be able to get to that sound of the guitar plugged directly into the amplifier. I hope you enjoyed what you saw today. I hope that this was somewhat eye-opening for you. If this had been something you've been rolling around in your brain and considering in your next rig build, I hope this helps consolidate some of that information for you. And if you like what you saw, I highly recommend that you like, you subscribe, you hit the bell icon so you're staying up to date with all the latest and greatest stuff that we're coming out with so that you can always know what we got. Until next time, I'm Mason Marangella, the Rig Doctor from Vertex Effects. Thanks for watching. See you later.